بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to deal with realism and Robinson Crusoe. So the title for today's lecture, Realism and Humanity in Robinson Crusoe. Before that, let me ask you some questions about previous lecture. You remember we have talked about Robinson Crusoe, the main elements of the novel, plot, theme, and point of view. What kind of a plot does Robinson Crusoe have? Again, what kind of a plot does Robinson Crusoe have? I will give you two options: simple and straightforward plot or complicated plot. Which one of these? Yes, that's right. So the answer is what? In Robinson Crusoe we have simple and straightforward plot. Another question: during which stage of the plot Crusoe disobeys his father? Again, during which stage of the plot in Robinson Crusoe Crusoe disobeys his father? A. Exposition stage, complications stage, climax stage, or resolution stage. We have four options again: exposition stage, complications stage, climax stage, or resolution stage. These are the stages of the plot. So in which one of these stages Crusoe disobeys his father? Yes, that's right. So the answer in the second stage, in complications stage. Another question: what are the general themes of Robinson Crusoe? What are the general themes in this novel? Yes, one, we can say we have colonial theme, individualism. Also we have something about religious disillusionment. Also we have another theme about family life and the relationship between sons and fathers. Another question: what kind of narrator is Crusoe? As a narrator, Crusoe is what? Is he a first-person narrator, second-person narrator, or third-person narrator? Which one of these? That's right. He is first-person narrator. Another question: why is there a close relationship between the reader and the narrator in Robinson Crusoe? Why do we have a close relationship between the reader and the narrator in this novel? Who can tell me the reasons? You can give one reason, two reasons, or more. I will give you two reasons. Because the narrator talks about his own experience, he doesn't talk about other person's experience, he talks about his own experience. This is the first reason. Another reason: there is no other source of information except this narrator, who is Crusoe, of course. So we have only one source of information in this novel. So we have a close relationship between the narrator and the reader. Now let's see our topic for today and see reality or realism and humanity in this novel. As introduction, the readers in the 18th century wanted a new kind of writing. So there was a kind of demand of readers Therefore, some writers began to think of the need of most people and started to look for some topics that were based on real life, which was so close to their humanity. So there was a need for some topics which were similar to their real life. One of these writers, of course, we have during that period of time, there was Daniel Defoe. Defoe wrote different types of writing and later wrote his first realistic novel, Robinson Crusoe, which was based on real adventures. He is usually considered the first realistic novelist in England, and we have seen that he based his novel on the adventures of the Scottish traveler. What is a realistic novel? So we are going to see this kind of novel and realism in writing fiction. A realistic novel is that novel which portrays the real aspects of everyday life. It deals with social life, whether it's high or low. So, in realistic novel, we have some representation of real life, whether it is high life or low life. So we have low life for the poor and common people, and high life for traders, merchants, etc. Ian Watts states that realism was related to the low subjects and immoral tendency. It was used as an antonym of idealism. According to Watts, we can see most of the novels talk about low-life topics. Low-life topics. Most of the novels are about poor people or middle-class people. So low-life of these topics. Realism means more than that. The novel's realism doesn't reside in the kind of life it represents, but in the way it represents it. It takes human experiences and reveals their beauty. So we don't talk about only real topics, but we are going to see the way these novelists reveal these topics. So we are going to see the way of showing reality of real life and of humanity. There are many effects of the realistic novel Robinson Crusoe on the readers in real life, such as we are going to see the effects of Robinson Crusoe as a realistic novel on the readers. The effects of this novel on the readers. The first effect, we have discovering the humanity and individuality of people. When the reader reads this novel, he can discover the humanity and individuality of people. The readers can find the reality of things and ideas by themselves through reading this novel alone without any help. So we can see they can discover reality and humanity of individuals in general in life through reading this kind of novel. Readers can get into the external and internal lives of all characters, not only one character. So they can enter into the internal and external lives of these characters and discover their reality and humanity. And they can construct a full picture of their lives. Finding the truth. This is another effect of the novel on the readers. Finding the truth. For example, Defoe discusses many ideas about his society in Robinson Crusoe. He leads his readers to find some true concepts about their social life through logical statements. So, the reader or readers in general can find the truth of their concepts, ideas, and truth. So they can find out the reality of their ideas Another effect, imitating the fictional experience. So we have some kind of imitation of these experiences in the novel. So the reader can imitate the experience and can do a similar experience, or he can undergo similar experiences. Imitating the fictional experience which is realistic and appropriate for them. So you can choose one of these characters in the novel and you can imitate his experience, and you can get reflections of this experience on you. So it's a kind of imitation. You can imitate some characters in their experiences. Through the realistic novel, the readers become more experienced and educated. These effects are achievable and realistic because this is the real nature of realistic novel. Flaubert, a realist, says, we can see this realist, he says that the novel's realism doesn't reside in the kind of life it presents, but in the way it presents it. Again, this is very important idea. We can see that the way of showing truth and real life is the main goal of realistic novel. Ian Watts says realism begins from the proposition that the truth can be discovered by the individual through the senses. So you can sense the truth and realism when you read any novel. You can decide whether this novel is realistic or unrealistic. The reader who can decide that. In the realistic novel, there is a kind of looking for the truth of things, ideas, people, and life in general. This is the main purpose of reading realistic novel. Now let's see Robinson Crusoe as a realistic novel. Robinson Crusoe is an imitation of real life, not of a literary work. It's not an imitation of another story from the previous writings. It's imitation of real life. So it's an imitation of real life. It's original, not traditional. It's original, not traditional. This novel is so close to the common people. It's a portrayal of low life. So it talks about the experience of low life hero. There are many critics who attack this novel and its realistic aspect because they think that it's better to address educated audience in such a work rather than having less educated audience. So most of the readers of this kind of novel are from the middle class and they are not well educated. So most of the readers of this novel, according to this view, are from common people. So they think that it's better to address educated readers than common readers. Other critics, on the other hand, consider this novel great because it's simple and can be read widely. So this is the opposite of the previous view. They are against them. They think that low life topics are more universal than high life topics. Most of the people can sense the truth in low life topics. There is a universal audience for this novel, so we can see more readers for this kind of novel. Now let's see some features of realism and humanity in Robinson Crusoe. Realism and humanity are considered as the main reasons behind popularity and fame of Robinson Crusoe. So if I ask you what are the reasons behind the success of this novel. Two reasons for this success are humanity and realism. Since we can read about human topics and the humanity of people, and we can get the truth about these people. So both of them, humanity and realism, are connected together. So these reasons are behind the success of Robinson Crusoe or this kind of novel. And remember that most of realistic novels take into their consideration realism and humanity together. So we have both topics are again connected. The aspects of realism and humanity make this novel different and distinguished from the previous kinds of writing. So this novel was different from the previous kinds of writings such as romances, plays, etc. The topic of this novel is distinguished and different. It is related to life itself. It's related to real topics, not imaginary or any legendary topic. The language of the novel is simple, so we can sense simplicity in Robinson Crusoe even at the level of the language. Even the language is very simple. You can understand the meaning of any words from the context, so it's not so difficult as the previous kinds of writing. If you want to read a poem from the previous period, you have to check your dictionary maybe more than 100 times. If you have 100 lines, so you have to check every line, you will find difficulty in reading some poems. So in this novel you can sense simplicity of the language. The language itself is very simple. So the language of the novel is simple, similar to everyday language. There is no complicated style of writing. Readers don't face complicated style of writing in this novel. It's an imitation of real life. It's based on real story, that of the Scottish traveler, as we said, so it is a simple language because it's related to a normal experience, and it's related to this Scottish traveler who is from common people. Defoe states in the preface of Robinson Crusoe that it is just history of fact. This is in his preface of the novel. Before starting the novel, you can see this in the preface. He says that the novel is just history of fact. It's a kind of history. Let's see this opinion of Crusoe. This novel is not a real history. It's not a real history. Defoe creates his characters and events from his own imagination. Crusoe is not a real character, and even the widow and other characters are not real. Even the topic and living for more than 28 years on the island, it is not a real experience of real people. So Defoe creates his characters and events from his imagination. Crusoe is different from the Scottish traveler. So we have some differences between the Scottish traveler and Crusoe himself. We have some differences. They are not similar in some way or another. There are three reasons for saying that it's just history of fact. So we can follow this and justify the use of this quotation, history of fact. So Robinson Crusoe is not a kind of history book. The first reason, Defoe wants readers to pay attention to historical interest in his novel. He says that in order to make his readers pay a lot of attention to historical events in his novel. Another reason, he wants his novel to be sold in large number, so he says that for publication sake, in order to publish his novel widely. Another reason, or the third reason, the readers at that time didn't yet believe in imagination. So they have something about the topics of writings in general at that time. They wanted something close to their real life. So Crusoe says that in order to approach the readers more. Some realistic features appear in the elements of the novel: characters, setting, plot, themes, and point of view. Now let's see some realistic features in these elements of the novel. We are going to start with character, then we are going to deal with setting, plot, theme, and point of view. And remember, we are going to focus on realistic features in these elements. Let's start with the first one, realistic characters. There are normal characters' names which are similar to real names. So we have different names in this novel. They are more realistic, and they are near or close to the names of real people. The names of characters are very important because they achieve individuality, reality, and humanity. So we have very important feature in characterization. Names, or the names of characters, are very important because they achieve individuality, reality, and humanity. The characters are human and realistic. So we can take some examples of this feature. Crusoe, the first example, Crusoe is afraid when he faces danger. So he is human and realistic. When he faces danger or sometimes death or in the storm, he feels, yes, frightened. He is afraid. Another example, Friday is loyal to Crusoe because he saved his life from the cannibals. So we can see that Friday is loyal to Crusoe. Another example, Crusoe has dreams like a human being. So this character has dreams like normal people. Now let's see realistic setting. We are going to take some examples in each element, and we are going to focus on realistic feature of this. Realistic setting, the setting adds more realistic meaning to the novel. We can sense that there are specific names for places such as his original city in England. For example, the York City. It is realistic. We have a name from everyday life. Crusoe also makes use of his surrounding environment. So Crusoe also makes use of his surrounding circumstances. He takes many things from the damaged ship which are useful to survive and manage his life on the island. A third one for the setting, there are also specific dates, the time. You remember we have place and time, and environment, social circumstances. There are also specific dates all over the novel, such as the date of his birth. He was born in 1632. He left the isolated island on 19th December 1686. We have a specific date. So we can sense the importance and the realistic use of date. Crusoe says, I left the island the 19th of December, on the 19th of December, as I found by the ship's account in the year 1686, after I had been upon it 8 and 20 years, 2 months and 19 days, being delivered from this second captivity the same day of the month. So we can sense the originality of date and the use of setting. After a long voyage, I arrived in England the 11th of June in the year 1687, having been 35 years absent. Now let's see realistic plot. Look at this. In this novel, there is a realistic sequence of events in its plot. So if I ask you, what's realistic plot? Who can tell me? Some critics say that this novel has a loose plot. There is no organic unity. It's like real life. There are many people in real life who have not organic unity. They change the sequence of their adventures and living to meet their circumstances. It flows like life itself. Now let's see an explanation of this. So there is a great deal of realistic descriptions in the novel, such as building his home in the island, growing wheat and saving some of it for the next season, and his food, hunting animals, and a lot of other realistic deeds. So we can sense the realistic features in these actions and in these events. Now let's focus our attention on realistic themes. The themes of the novel are taken from the real life. Most of these themes are universal and related to human understanding. For example, we can sense the theme of individualism, disobedience between the father and the son. We have a realistic theme. Usually we have this kind of relationship in some societies, especially in the English society. We can sense the relationship between son and father and the disobedience between these two members. Colonial power. We have a theme of colonialism and imperialism at that age, so we can sense it's from real life, and we can sense in the English Empire the theme of colonial attack on other countries. And we have a lot of these realistic themes all over the novel. Now let's see realistic point of view. Crusoe doesn't make himself as a great hero. He looks at himself most of the time as a normal human being. So he is normal. He is not a Superman, or he is not very strong. He is normal and close to a human being. As a narrator, he describes events as if they are happening in front of his eyes. So he is like a camera. He can take realism in his portraying the events. So he has realistic point of view as a narrator. Therefore, he has a realistic view of everything around him. Now let's see the other side. We said that we have realism and humanity in Robinson Crusoe. Now let's see humanity in Robinson Crusoe. Crusoe is a good example of humanity. We can sense that in Coleridge's statement, who says, the universal representative, the person for whom every reader could substitute himself. So anyone can put himself in the place of Crusoe. We have similarity between real people in life and Crusoe. So anyone can put himself in this place. Crusoe stands for all human beings, not only for himself. He stands for all human beings. He represents all the people. He has a great ability to survive for a long time, but Aristotle criticizes the man who lives alone by himself. We have another view of this hero, or of Crusoe. He says, Aristotle says, Crusoe is unable to live in society or has no need because he is sufficient for himself. Must be either a beast or a god. So we have two different aspects of Crusoe according to Aristotle. He is either a beast or a god. So you can decide one of these two, beast or a god. So according to Aristotle, Crusoe is not a human. He is not in between. He is a beast or he is a god. Crusoe is a human. According to our view, we can sense that Crusoe is not a beast, and we can say he is not a god. Crusoe is human and needs social contact with other people. He is looking for social contact with other people, but he didn't find any people on the island. He realizes the real value of his society. After living for a long time without any human contact, he has a spiritual weakness. He wasn't a beast, by the way. He was a human. He discovers that it's not sufficient to live physically, but there is another spiritual side that also makes people more human. So we have two sides for this character, physical side and spiritual side. Physical side, we said that he managed to live and eat and sleep. Spiritual side, he focused his attention on his religion. He starts to look for his humanity through his religion. So we can sense religion helps him to become more human again. There are other things that can make him human, but they are out of reach. He couldn't speak with other people, so he has no cause in this since he is isolated. There are other things that can make him human, but they are not available. They are out of reach. He also tries to teach his slave and his parrot in order to have a kind of compensation for this social contact. Although it seems impossible to have such experience which lacks social contact, Crusoe succeeds in that and develops his humanity. There are some unrealistic features. Let's have a look on the other side of this novel and see unrealistic features. The first unrealistic feature, we can say, there isn't enough description of the emotional side of Crusoe and some other characters. So we don't have emotional experiences all over the novel. This is unrealistic. There isn't any romantic love. So we can't see a love story in this novel. It's away from romances and away from the previous kinds of novels. In other countries, for example in France, there were some romances or romantic novels before that. The impact of the materialistic thinking of his society is clear and effective in the life of Crusoe. Crusoe has no emotional feelings towards others, including his family. He becomes inhuman and devoid of any emotional reaction. He is away from these emotional experiences and emotional features. He is materialistic. The main concern for this character, Crusoe, we can sense he is materialistic. He is looking for material, money, trade, etc. For example, he sells his servant Kasuri even after he trusts in him and finds him loyal. We can see he has no emotional relationship even with his loyal servant Kasuri. He sells him to the Portuguese captain. We can see that Crozo decides to make a good man of this slave, but he doesn't complete his mission and sells him to the Portuguese captain for the sake of money. So for the sake of money, he sells his loyal servant. Some readers think that this is unrealistic since there is a kind of a promise between Crozo and his servant. Other readers can see this event as a kind of realistic relationship between a colonist and a colonized. So we have a relationship between a colonist and a colonized slave or servant because the colonist sees the colonized as a kind of commodity. Crozo sees Kasuri as a kind of commodity, as a thing, not a human being. So we can sense that the materialistic attitude of Crozo at the expense of his humanity and realistic feature. Crozo, another unrealistic feature, Crozo gives descriptions of some tools and places, but when it comes to any one of his real adventures, he describes it in short. He doesn't describe his relationship with other people in a long description. But when he comes to a tool, he describes it for a long time. The period of living, another feature, the period of living alone is too long. To live alone for more than 28 years, it's unrealistic. It is unrealistic because a man such as Crozo can manage his escape from the island in less than this period. So Crozo can manage his escape from the island. This will be in short time, not in a long time for 28 and more, even more than 28. He couldn't manage his escape. It is unrealistic. It would be more realistic to spend less time on the island and to leave the island in about, for example, we can say, let's say 8 years or 10 years, it's enough. But for a long time, this is the period of most of his life. In spite of these unrealistic features, Defoe presents a realistic novel, and he is the master of this kind. So he is the master of this kind of writing, the realistic writing. There are some human and realistic features in this novel that make it one of the most popular realistic novels. So this novel is authentic and original realistic novel. So it is realistic novel, and it is what? One of the best realistic novels. Thank you so much. See you next lecture. اوكي، وقت طويل ولا قصير باسم؟
طبعا نبغى نكمل